Hello and welcome back to another video. In today's video, everything is kicked off between Jeffree, Morphe and Kilo over here, who wants all the attention right now. Do you want to make your debut now? Come on. This is baby Kilo. He arrived 2 days ago. I drove about 4 hours to pick him up and then 4 hours back. He's an absolute cutie, but he's too low. I'm so sorry. I can't lift you any higher because he's quite heavy. He's a big dog. Considering he's only a baby, he's actually massive. So if you hear someone squealing away in the background, Kilo's not used to my studio yet, but he's getting used to it. So he's just curled up on my bed, on my pillow, slobbering everywhere. But I've been sleeping in the living room with him just to get him settled because at night time he gets a bit scared sometimes. So okay, I'll put you down. Everything is kicked off today because Jeffree Star responded to a post by Def Noodles on Twitter showing Jeffree Star products on sale in TJ Maxx. Now, this is so controversial because you might remember years ago, Jeffree was roasting Kat Von D for having her products in TJ Maxx as if it was like the worst possible thing that could ever happen. Now, here at Cookie Tea Cooking's Courtroom, we have discussed the TJ Maxx business model before. It's not always terrible if a product ends up there. You might just have some excess stock or some stock that's going to expire. Some brands even survive in TJ Maxx, selling at huge discounts. He's snoring. He's so funny. Now, obviously, Jeffree and Morphe broke up a while ago because Morphe just said no, basically. They kept him on the books for years through all the controversies, but they turned around one day and said that we are no longer affiliated with Jeffree Star. And that was a huge hit to, I think, Jeffree's street cred and reputation. You okay? It's a hard life being a baby. So, this was a huge drama and a huge hit to Jeffree's reputation when Morphe made that statement, because this is the first time Morphe had really made a statement like that. Why don't we just get straight into the tweet that was posted by Jeffree? So Jeffree said, "I think it's time to sit down and do a video update on how this happened and also how Morphe betrayed me by putting me in UK's TK Maxx stores earlier this year. I'm done being shamed for the lies." I think this is really, really interesting. Now, if we look at the context of the situation, obviously, Jeffree was heavily involved with the whole Dramageddon situation with Tati. Well, that was ages ago, actually. But you know the recent Dramageddon situation, like Dramageddon 2.0 with James Charles and Tati. And Tati sort of accused James of being a bit of a predator. And Jeffree got on the back of that on Twitter as well. And one of the stories behind the scenes was that despite everything that happened, James had actually teamed up with Tati to bring Jeffree down. That was one of the rumours that was going on behind the scenes from a credible source. But then they've now just unfollowed each other, James and Tati, pretty much in the past week. So obviously some things happened there, a bit controversial, we have no idea. But all these bloody egos, it's really hard to keep up with it, isn't it? It's just like, is it Game of Thrones, that show where they all kill each other? I've not seen it, but everyone used to tell me about it. It sounded absolutely crazy. What's also really interesting here is that this is to do with Jouer, that lip brand with the lip toppers. So the original tweet by Def Noodles said, "Totally unexpected. Jeffree Star Cosmetics products seen being sold at TJ Maxx in Idaho." Now, I think what's really interesting here is that this is a very old product. Like the Jouer Jeffree lip topper was years ago. So if that hasn't sold, it's really surprising because he used to make out it was like selling out every 5 seconds to still have stock left years later. I didn't know it was still being sold if it was being sold. But yeah, so this is really interesting because it made me think, is Jouer a brand of Morphe? Like I haven't really looked into this too much in the past, but it's interesting that a Jouer product with Jeffree was posted in TK Maxx and then Jeffree's response to that was to drag Morphe, like as if Morphe put the product in there. So that was just one thing that got me thinking a bit, like, was this product manufactured by Morphe? Was it like a private label on behalf of Morphe? Which is so crazy because Morphe used to have the reputation years and years ago of being everything private label, just generic palettes with a name slapped on them. And we discussed that on this channel as well. But definitely very, very interesting. Jeffree then took to Instagram to discuss this further on his story. Okay, the baby's asleep on my lap now because he didn't want to be on the floor because he's too good for the floor. What was really interesting was Jeffree was directly addressing the fact that it's okay to sell like in TK Maxx and TJ Maxx. But he was so fast to drag Kat Von D when she was being sold in TJ Maxx. So I think it's just definitely hypocritical and double standards, and it doesn't look good from his perspective. Like, it's fine to have your expensive products being sold at a huge discount in these stores, like, but it doesn't really align with this whole image of like everything selling out so quickly, which also like the lipstick stock levels when we talked about those didn't really add up either. Anyway, let's just keep going with the story. Now, Jeffree broke up with Morphe in July, so that shows you the kind of timescale. That's pretty much a year ago now, isn't it? So things have been quiet, but from our perspective, no one was really mad at Morphe. Jeffree just moved over to, was it Beautylish or Beauty? But I think it was Beautylish he moved over to and continued to sell. But I think the biggest thing with Morphe wasn't necessarily just the sales. I think it was the endorsement. The fact that Morphe was pretty much the only bricks and mortar store that was selling Jeffree products. Because we didn't see them in Ulta. Ulta tried briefly, and they had this huge poster and someone put graffiti across it saying racist. So this was a huge hit to Jeffree's street cred, because suddenly he was removed from pretty much the biggest store that he was being sold in and that his face was in. And Jeffree's someone that I think has always struggled with credibility, with getting people to believe in him, that he's a good person, a nice person, that he's successful because of the stunts that we've seen in the past. And I think losing this was a huge, huge thing for him, because suddenly he was now pretty much just an online brand. I mean, he was still in a few different places here and there, but his main retailer that he was selling through, Morphe, had obviously dropped him. So I think it was definitely a really big hit for him. Just to quote what Morphe said, I think it was in a tweet. "Today we have made the decision to cease all commercial activity related to Jeffree Star and affiliated products," Morphe wrote. "We expect this to conclude within the coming weeks. As we look to the future, we will continue to share updates on what lies ahead for the Morphe brand." That sounds huge, doesn't it? That sounds like a huge announcement. Like, what lies ahead for the Morphe brand? It seems like, well, it sounds like they're trying to take Morphe in a completely different direction, which is really, really interesting. I think as the brand's got bigger and Linda and the other owners sold a majority share in the company, maybe, you know, the new owners and the new directors have just decided this is not what we want to be tolerating and putting up with. I think a lot of brands have got sick of the really big influencers and the dramas and stuff like that. You can see a lot of the brands that used to constantly work with influencers have stopped now. And maybe they send some packages to the micro influencers, but the big ones, a lot of people are avoiding now, because so say, for example, Chipotle and Elf doing their collaboration with James Charles. That was their one product that they'd done as a collab, and it was posted in the midst of James Charles's scandal. And then the whole reputation, every time anyone thinks of Elf and Chipotle in beauty together, they're going to think of James Charles and the whole scandal that he was in. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of just a bit too hot to touch now, which I think is interesting, definitely. Obviously, some of the big brands will still work with them, but yeah, I don't know. I personally am very, very interested to hear what's being said by Jeffree in this video. I don't tend to watch Jeffree's videos, but I'm interested to hear what he says about Morphe and what happened, because from our perspective, we've been asking and expecting Morphe to take action against some of its more problematic influencers for years now, and Morphe's really turned a blind eye, you know. So I think it was a huge success for the beauty industry and for equality and for anti-bullying for Morphe to take a step back from Jeffree, and then it was a great thing when they took a step back from James, except they didn't, because they could just continue to sell them in the stores and online. So nothing really changed in that respect. Like, now bear in mind, any other brand, like even brands like Givenchy, for example, I think they collaborated years ago with a beauty influencer, and the only beauty influencer they've ever done a really big collab with was so non-controversial. And a lot of these brands won't even touch influencers, will they? Won't even touch the influencers, because they're just too controversial and they can do damage to the brand. And if you already have a great reputation behind a brand, you don't need to be mixing it. So that's why it was kind of scrupulous that Jeffree was still being pushed hard by Morphe. It kind of made Morphe look a bit cheap, because they were still pushing someone with such a bad reputation. And when we say bad reputation, we're talking about past and present racism and stuff like that, right? With the Jackie Aina situation, Makeup Shayla, with the shouting racist comments down the street, with pulling the girl's hair out of the concert, with slapping someone in the face, all on camera, with the drunk guy that he'd had sex with, making jokes about him whilst he was passed out in his toilet. The list really goes on and on and on, so I won't dig into it too much, but it looks like Morphe cracked, basically, and they were like, we can't keep doing this. You okay? Come on. Do you want to go over my shoulder? Come on, baby. Oh. Why don't we read some of the tweets about this? So, the lady, Phantom Hive, said, "Didn't you shame Kat Von D for the same thing? Looks like you've made your bed, why not lie in it?" Definitely very, very true. "Oh, and Morphe didn't betray you. They dropped you and James Charles for your me behaviour. Say it loud and proud now." Very, very interesting. Lady Fantahive is definitely speaking the truth on this one from my perspective. Erica said, "The fact that he's bitching because they dropped him, it was for no reason." And then beneath that, Makeup Princess said it actually was for no good reason, because ironically they dropped him for the drama that went down when Jeffree tried to call out James as a predator years ago and no one believed him, and Morphe dropped him and kept James when he was right this entire time. LMFAO. So I think people are getting their truths a little bit mixed up here though. That's one thing, because when that whole thing was happening, like we're pretending that Jeffree hasn't been accused of the exact same thing. Like when the original thing happened with Jeffree calling out James Charles and the whole situation, people came forwards against Jeffree and said that whilst he was on tour at the Warp Tour, he had a similar thing with underage boys. And there was a few people online saying that, in addition to the guy that we posted a video about a few months ago saying that he was at a concert when he was underage, and Jeffree literally just groped him really inappropriately in the bum whilst he was picking up a lighter or something from the floor. So from that perspective, it's kind of like the pot calling the kettle black, right? I don't know what that phrase means, by the way, but people always say it. Okay, Lisa said, some people can't even afford your makeup. I think in all reality, old products should be sold at stores like TJ Maxx, because then more people can use your products. If it's all about money and not having your stuff at bargain stores for us poor folk to buy, just say so. That's kind of a difficult thing, because obviously in business, it's not about supplying a product to everyone. If you do that, most likely the higher end market aren't going to be interested, because it loses its exclusivity, kind of like with bags and stuff like that. So also, like, if you sell a product at a huge discount and it's a high quality product and it's expensive to make, you make a loss on that. So it's one thing to want to provide products to people that can't afford them, but not if your company loses money, because the whole point of a company is to make money, right? In response to that, S said, but Morphe can't just load off product at random stores, especially if there's no contract stating they're allowed to do that. Also, does TJ Maxx differentiate between old product and expired product? Even cheap product is too expensive when you get rashes or eye infections. So that's really interesting, but I'm just surprised people are going after Morphe. I guess it's Jeffree Stans, but most likely Jeffree wasn't paying to have the product manufactured. If Morphe pays to have the product manufactured and they're paying for the marketing and they're doing the campaigns and they're stocking it in their stores, it sounds more like a licensing deal. And if it is a licensing deal where Jeffree puts his name on it, they could have had a contract in place. But I think if Jeffree tried to tell Morphe where they couldn't sell their product, I think most likely Morphe wouldn't have sold his product the way that they did, right? I think he was an easy person to work with because he wanted the business, right? But one thing that's interesting, for example, is Debenhams in England, a lot of the stores have closed down now, and Chanel, for example, and a few other high-end brands, they didn't let their products go on sale at like 50% discount, 40% discount like a lot of the clothes did. They actually bought back their stock. So that's what I was told by the store employees. So I guess if they sell their stock to Boots, for example, at like a 40% discount or something like that, they were purchasing their product back just so it didn't go on sale, because it would damage the brand having high-end products going on sale for no reason, right? Because Chanel hasn't gone bust, it was Debenhams that sort of went under, right? I think the thing about eye infections is really interesting as well, because selling expired products, like I went to a retail store recently and they were selling expired chocolate that went off 2 months ago, and I was like, can you even do this? And they were selling it, instead of like £5, it was £4, and I was like, that's not a good enough discount, you know? Luna said, oh, I've been waiting for this. Morphe is an effing dumpster fire. Anyway, I am very interested to hear what you think about this. The whole situation is absolutely crazy. I'm very interested to hear what Jeffree says about Morphe. I'm very interested to hear if there could be a potential lawsuit, because I think that's the last thing Jeffree needs right now. It looks like he's in financial hardship. I mean, his products are being flogged left, right and centre. His own products from his own website, some of his palettes are being sold at 50% off. Some of his liquid lipsticks have been discounted from $18 to like $4 or something. There's been some huge discounts with Jeffree Star Cosmetics, bigger discounts than Marc Jacobs, and Marc Jacobs is closing down. So that's really, really interesting when you think of it like that, right? So it seems like I don't think Jeffree's in a position to really get in a lawsuit with Morphe. I think he would have to be very careful what he says in his video. But yeah, it seems like he doesn't have many things working for him right now. And also you have to remember, if Jeffree comes after Morphe now, what chance is Jeffree going to have of selling in Sephora and Ulta in the future, unless he remains, you know, unless he goes back to being a huge celebrity? I don't think they would touch him, because he's actively come after a huge retailer that he's already worked with. Do you see what I mean? Like, he's kind of like, we don't really want to work with that. And also, considering his controversy, he's kind of making himself unsellable, which I think is really interesting when you think of it like that. So anyway, let me know what you think about this down below. I am so sorry for the delay in getting videos to you. I was driving yesterday to get, was it yesterday I was getting the little one? I think yesterday was his full day here. Day before yesterday, I drove out to get the little one. It was a 4-hour drive there. I had to drop my car off on the way and drive in a friend's car, and we got home quite late, and then I had to sleep with him downstairs because he was anxious. And then it's honestly like having a baby. It's like having a full-time child because he just needs all your attention all the time. If I leave the room, he starts crying. I don't want him to get too attached to me, like separation anxiety, but I want him to get comfortable in the house first. And right now, this is his first time coming upstairs because I've just kept him in the living room and the kitchen so far so we can get used to the space. And bless him, I think he's fine with this room, but the other room, the first bedroom, he was not happy with. And I've got like 4 or 5 other bedrooms for him to go around, so I want to take it a bit slower. Anyway, on behalf of me and Kilo, who's quiet now, so I don't want to lift him, I want to say a huge thank you for watching. I really hope you enjoyed today's video. If you want to see more photos of the baby, they'll be on my Instagram, John Cookie, and on my story most likely. But yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.